At our last year, we couldn't imagine in our worst dreams what the circumstances will be when we get together after Yom Tov. And this year's Simchas Torah was like none other we experienced in the past, and we very much hope like none other we will ever experience in the future. It's hard to say on Shabbos Kodesh and Simchas Torah Yom Maravinim Har, but in a way, the day of greatest simcha we have all year was a Yom Maravinim Har, when we were attacked by a brutal, barbaric enemy. And since the Shoah, never were more than 1,000 Jews, Anoshim, Noshim, Vetav, just murdered in cold blood. Murdered in such a barbaric fashion. And who would believe that this could happen? Be'eretz Kodshenu. After thousands of years of dreaming, and we came back to Eretz HaKodesh, our own army, and this could happen. What a terrible Gzeira. So there are people that always seem to know why HaKadosh Baruch Hu does whatever he does. And in some circles we are hearing voices, this is to blame and those are to blame. And the Rambam writes in the beginning of Hilchos Taniyos that when tragedy strikes, we do have to do a cheshbon nefesh. And we should not believe in coincidence. Of course, people make decisions, bear the consequences. And the murderers in Iran, in Hamas, deserve to be destroyed. But as Yidden, Ma'aminim b'nei Ma'aminim, we also need to do our own cheshbon nefesh. But when we do a cheshbon nefesh, it's always easier to do the cheshbon nefesh of others than your own. It's far more convenient to say, look at other people's shortcomings, at the non-frum, and that's not derech HaTorah. Yoina Hanavi finds himself on a boat, and it's a stormy sea. Yoina is a Novi. And I want you to understand, being a Novi is not just Kadosh Baruch Hu decides. He gives you divine knowledge. Being a Novi is a madrega you need to work on. And the Navim were the greatest tzaddikim of their generations. So Yoina HaNovi is a heilige Novi, a holy man, and he's on a boat with Oivdei Avodah Zorah. All of them are Oivdei Avodah Zorah, and they all cry out to their gods, LaEloheihem. But Yoina says, B'sheli Hasar Haseh, I am to blame. The holy Novi, the heilige Novi. So when tragedy strikes, everyone needs to ask, what are my shortcomings? How could I be better? Don't point fingers at others. It's about you. And that is what we learn from the Rambam. So we all need to be better. One of the beautiful things we see in this war is the achdus of Klal Yisrael. It's not to believe that just 2 weeks ago, this country, Eretz Yisrael, was torn asunder with so much machlekes, the right and the left, and so much. We Jews never seem to be able to get along with each other. But in times of tragedy and war, it's unbelievable to see a Yiddish hearts, how we all come together. And there are so many exceptionally heroic stories of Mesirus Nefesh. Yesterday, Erev Shabbos, I went to be Menachem over the Slotki family. They live down the block, 200 meters from my house. Wonderful people. The father, the Rosh Mishpoch, Harav Shiur, young Israel Shiur in Ramot. They lost 2 sons. Both sons left almonas and babies. 2 brothers lived in Beersheba. They weren't serving in the army, but they heard what's happening down south, put on their uniforms, and went down to fight. They didn't have to do so. Nobody called them up, but they understood. When Eden sind in a sakana, when Jews are in danger, we are all there, and we all rise to the challenge. Both boys were killed in action. And parents are sitting shiva over 2 boys. It is heart-wrenching. I just sat there and cried. And the commander of one of the 2 boys, totally Chiloni, walked in and he started crying. It's moving to see battle-hardened soldiers that saw everything. They saw combat, they saw bloodshed, crying like little children over one another. And that is an amazing display of achdus. And it is not only in Israel, wherever there's a Jewish community in the entire world. This is unique to Jews. I don't think it can happen to any other people. Wherever there is a Jewish community, big or small, from Winnipeg to Pretoria, from Johannesburg to Copenhagen, to Moscow, to New York, to wherever, Jews stand together. And that gives us a lot of hope. Because Chazal teach us in Medrash, Moshe la'agudah shel koni. One little straw, a baby could break it. But when you tie 1,000 straws together, Shimshon HaGiver can't break them. Kol zman she'yasor ba'agudah achas, ein kol umah v'loshen yechola lishloit b'hem. If we stand together, nobody could overcome us. That's Chazal. And in Bamidbar Rab Olamites, there's another medrash, which is amazing. Ma bein Doreh shel David leDoreh shel Achav. Doreh shel David tinokes shelo tamu tam chet. V'yadu lidrosh memtes ponim letayer, memtes ponim letami. They learned Torah, they were versed, they were from. V'hoye yotzem lemalchama v'noiflim. They went to war and they were vanquished. Mipnei shidil turim hayu b'neihem. There was machlekes. Doreh shel Achav oivdei avodah zorah hayu. And they went to battle and they were victorious. Mipnei shelo hayu dil turim b'neihem. So this gives us a lot of hope. The achdus of Klal Yisrael. This is something we need to cherish. It's a Kiddush Hashem because it is unparalleled and unprecedented. That's the way Jews are. I wish and I hope and I daven that some of this achdus would stay with us. All this tragedy and war would be over. I was a young bocher at the 6-Day War. My family, my late father and mother, we moved to Eretz Yisrael a few months before 6-Day War in 1967. And I remember the Pachad, 3 mighty armies on all 3 borders of Israel. People were really afraid. Chaz v'sholim of another Chorban. Reb Chaskel Avramsky, the great Rosh Hashiva, the great Dayan, was totally calm. And he tried to give everyone confidence. And when asked, why aren't you afraid? Haskell said, Klal Yisrael is ba'achdus. And really, there was an amazing sense of achdus, of unity. To my dismay, what brings us together is always an external threat. Yiyah ma sheyiyah, we are ba'achdus. And we need our ba'achdus, that gives them strength. Ve'ein kol umah v'loshin yochayel lishlet behem. So in times like this, we need to strengthen this achdus. And b'chlal, I saw by my Rebbe, the Kloisem of the Rebbe, Zechat Tzadik B'Kodesh Labroch, and I think that is a tradition of Gedolei Chasidus. When Midas Adin strikes, it is wrong to be makaterik. We only have to see the shivchon, the b'toipasam shel Yisrael. And there is so much beauty to see. So much Mesiras Nefesh. Senior commanders that are already grandfathers, people that aren't fit at all, 60s and their 70s, when they heard about this tragedy unfolding in the South, put on their uniforms and their private firearms, went down south, put their lives on the line. Some of them were killed. So we turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Habeit. Habeit mishumayim ure'ei. This is the way you want us to be. So, we've got to get Zeus. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be Merachem. Yitem Avenu Lidofen Lefaneinu. So at times of crisis, and Amidas Adin, one of the greatest gulas is Talmud Torah. I will talk about this a bit later, so let's learn. We've been learning every Sunday for years. Let's learn. And the sugya we will be discussing today is Melchama. Chazal teach us, let us hope. So you're sitting in New York, I'm sitting in my comfortable home in Yerushalayim. When we are oisig b'toras melchama, it is as if we all join the battle, as if we're all with the troops down south, waiting to storm Gaza. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us siyata b'shmai. So today we don't have that many Maramekoimis. But nevertheless, I hope the shiur will be inspiring and interesting. Before dealing with Melchama b'Shabbos, some general questions. As you all know from the news, Israel put a siege on Gaza. And Gaza is locked in, ein yotze ve'ein bo. Israel also denies the Arabs in Gaza food, water, and electricity. Is that legitimate? Is that mutar? Kosav HaRambam. Aryeh Kulevi Metrich, we just walk over to my bookshelf in the corner. Second floor, extreme right, Rambam Shoiftim, the last chaylik. Kosav HaRambam Perek Vav Halacha Zayin Mehilchas Malachim. Not everybody knows that Hilchas Malachim is Hilchas Malachim ve'Melchamos. So the Rambam in this sefer gives us all the halachas of Melchamas. How do Jews wage war? Perek Vav Halacha Zayin Kosav HaRambam Kishetzorim Al Ir Letavsa Ein Makifen Noisa Ma'ara Baruch Hoiseyo אלא משולו שלו חויסאו, ומניח אל מוקם לברויח, ולמי שלא יצא להימולת על נפשוי. You need to leave one side open. Anybody that wants to escape and salvage his life should have the option to do so. How do we know this halacha? שנאמר ויצבאו על מדיין קשת ציוו השם את מוישה מפי שמו למדו שבכך ציווהו. So let me make something clear. Sometimes when I give a shiur, people think that I am in control of the Israeli army and the Shabak and the Mossad and the police force. Let me make this very clear. I'm not in charge. Neither the Minister of Defense nor the Prime Minister, and not even the Chief of Staff, that Ramatkal gave me a call and they asked me for a psak. Yes, I am involved. And many senior commanders, and also the Rabbonim. The RDF has a roof, the police have a roof, the Shabak has a roof, and they all turn to me for psak. But still, I'm not in charge, you know. But nevertheless, we need to know that what we do is right, and then we'll have siyata d'shmaya. So is it legitimate to close Gaza from all sides and prevent? The Rambam doesn't bring the other halacha, but there's a safri. And the safri, and the psukim I just saw a few minutes ago on your screen, the safri in Pasha Shoiftim teaches us about Malchames. Ki tikra vel iya lehilochem aleo vekoroso aleo l'shalom. The Safri says lehilochem aleo lo lahariva, lo lahatzmiya, lo lahamisa misas taklud. You can't prevent food, you can't prevent water. You need to give them food, water, and you can't cause epidemics to break out. So is it legitimate that Israel is preventing food, water, and electricity from Gaza? It is. So let's deal with the two halachas, the one brought in the Rambam and the Sifri that's not brought in the Rambam. So the Ramban, as we all know, because we dealt with this 1,000 times, the Ramban adds on some mitzvahs that the Rambam omits and subtracts some mitzvahs that the Rambam did count. Mitzvah hey sheshochach harav mitzvahs asei. The Ramban wonders, why doesn't the Rambam bring this halacha as one of the Taryag mitzvahs shebetayra? Keshetzorim al iyala tavsa ein makifen oisa ma'al baruch oiseo. Why isn't it brought in Sefer HaMitzvahs? I think the Megillah Esther is right. Who am I to say right? But the Megillah Esther is miyashiv the Rambam. According to the Rambam, this is a halacha mesiemes and dina malchama. It's not a mitzvah to say into its own. Dina malchama is counted in the Taryag mitzvahs, and this is not more than one of the details. So the Ramban writes, mitzvah Rishonishin is mitzvah hey, we are a mitzvah aleph. If you want to see the Rambam, scroll down to mitzvah hey. Mitzvah hey sheshochach harav mitzvot ha'asei. The Ramban wonders why the Rambam did not count this as one of the Taryag mitzvahs of the Torah. So the Megillah Esther says it is not a mitzvah. The whole raya that it's not a mitzvah, the Rambam in Mishnah Torah and Hilchas Malachim v'Malchames does bring this halacha. But if we go to the beginning of Hilchas Malachim, and as you know in Hilchas Malachim, the Rambam in every one of the halachas in Mishnah Torah, the Rambam enumerates what are all the mitzvahs that are explained in this sefer. And the Rambam in Hilchas Malachim v'Malchames counts 23 mitzvahs. And if you go through the list, you won't find the mitzvah to leave one side open. So the Megillah Esther writes, it's very clear that the Rambam's hashkafa, this is a halacha, but it's not a mitzvah. And I want to strengthen the argument of the Megillah Esther. Many times I explained, and I wrote this in my sefer, and I explained this Baal Peh. There are many more mitzvahs than Taryag. Taryag are only tzivuyim mifuroshim, commands. The Taryag mitzvahs are only mitzvahs that in the Torah are clearly presented as a tzivui. But there are many, many more mitzvahs than Taryag. Now I'll give you a few examples. So these are Magdim and mitzvahs. It's a halacha, it's Mana Torah. But none of the Rishonim counted as a mitzvah to say. And why is that? Because what is the source that we learn these Magdim and mitzvahs from Avraham Avinu? v'yachvosh es chamoidoi. So that is not a mitzvah to say. Hidur mitzvah. Nobody counts it as a mitzvah to say. Why not? It's menatayra. We learn it from Zekeli Vanvei, it's not from the mitzvahs. But once again, Zekeli Vanvei is not a tzivui, it's not a command. B'nai Yisrael, at a moment of unbelievable elevation and kirvis Elokim, like Kriyas Yamsef cried out Zekeli Vanvei. It's not a Kodesh Baruch Hu that commanded Zekeli Vanvei. So the same goes to our mitzvah. The number means, what is the source? How do we know that you cannot lock a city from all four sides? Shenemar v'yitzba'u al midyon ka'asher tzivu Hashem es Moshe. That's a story. That's not a tzivui. And therefore it's not a mitzvah. But still it's a halacha. So how could we ignore this halacha? This brings us to halacha number 2. The safri. Le'elocha maleo, lo lahariva v'lo lahatzmiya. Have a look at Rashi and Posek Weiss. And I'm just going to read 3 psukim. We should be able to understand the context. Ki sikra v'el elocha maleo v'korosu v'alei risholim. V'hoyuim sholim tanchu v'poscha lacho v'hoyekol amanim tzavayir l'chol amaz v'aveducho. When you lay siege to a city, you need to offer peace. And if the enemy surrenders, and he said, yes, we're not going to fight, we want peace. Ve'im lo tashlim imach, ve'asasu imcha malchama, ve'tzarto oleho. Let's have a look at Rashi. Ve'tzarto oleho, af lahar iva ve'latzmiya ve'lamisa misas tachluim. And this is also a safri. So there seems to be a stira contradiction between Posek Yud, Safri, and Posek Yud Beis. Posek Yud, Safri says, Lo lahariva, lo latzmiya, lo lahamita misas tachluim. And Posek Yud Beis, the very same Safri says, Af lahariva, v'latzmiya, v'lahamisa misas tachluim. So some Achronim grapple with this contradiction. If it is a contradiction, Rashi ignores Posek Yud and he only quotes Posek Yud Beis. So we would assume halacha, af lahatzmiya, v'lahariva, v'lamisa misas tachluim. But in reality, it's not a stira at all. So we have the psukim on the screen. Let's go scroll back up to Posek Yud, and once again we'll learn Yud, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis. These psukim deal with 2 stages, 2 different stages, which have 2 different halachas. Ki sikrav el ir le'elochem oleo v'korosu oleo l'shol. We're not fighting yet. We're not fighting. We're laying siege to a city. And before one shot was fired, we offer peace. And we tell the population, we're not here to destroy you. We don't want bloodshed. If you're willing to make peace, then you're going to be okay. At this stage, it is legitimate to put a siege on the city to threaten them. But at this stage, you need to leave one side open. Whoever wants to leave should leave. They're not fighting us yet. At this stage, everything is okay. However, if the enemy decides, and they decided to fight, and at that stage, at that stage, if they decided to fight us, we can do anything to destroy the enemy and to be victorious and avoid and prevent bloodshed of our own. So it goes without saying, in our circumstances, we're not dealing with Sama siege. They came into our country savagely, brutally, something that hasn't been seen for years. Massacred. and they captured Jews, we can do anything to destroy the enemy, and it is legitimate al-pi halacha. So up to this point, we dealt with halachas of warfare. And now we're going over to Shabbos, and this is a fascinating discussion which I wrote about in my sefer, in Parshas Shoftim, Chumash Devorim. But the shiur today is somewhat more comprehensive than anything I ever said or wrote in the past. So towards the end of the parsha, and we're still in Parshas Shoftim, the Torah goes on, and we have the mitzvah of lo tashchis eitz eitza. Even in times of war, don't destroy nature. And an eitz tree, you cannot cut it down to build a siege. Rak eitz asher teida ki lo eitz machalu, oisoi tashchis v'choroto, v'benisu matzor alo ir asher oise imcho malchomo ad rideto. These two words, ad rideto. Chazal Shabbos Yutes Omid Aleph in Bavli, Yerushalmi Yud Gimel Omid Aleph ad rideto afilu b'Shabbos. Eitz asher teida ki lo eitz machalu oisoi tashchis v'choroto. And you build a siege and barricade the city ad rideto. So Shabbos Yutes Omid Aleph, there are two halachas brought in the same brayso. Ein mafligim besfinig gimel yomim lefnei Shabbos. Ein tzoren ala yorosh hanachlim gimel yomim lefnei Shabbos. If you need to travel the sea, you cannot embark on this journey 3 days before Shabbos. And if you want to lay a siege on an enemy city, you can do it 3 days before Shabbos. Are these two halachas two sides of the same coin? Same rationale and reasoning? Are they two different halachas? And the only common denominator is Gimel Yomim Lifnei Shabbos. There are two different pshatim. Why ein mafligi b'sfinig Gimel Yomim Lifnei Shabbos? The different the Rambam explained, it's just an Indian of Einik Shabbos. Many times when people travel the sea, they become seasick. Seasickness is a very disturbing sensation. It's extreme nausea. People vomit. After a few days, you usually get used to it and you feel better. So the different Rambam both say, because you're probably going to feel awful, and that's a violation of Einik Shabbos. It's all about Einik Shabbos. And the different Rambam explained the same, Ein Tzoren ala Yorosh hanachlim. As we explained before, Ein Tzoren b'Yorosh hanachlim, stage number 1, we're not in battle yet. We're just laying a siege on the city. It could wait. It could wait. You could wait till after Shabbos. And when you lay a siege on a city, there is so much going on, so much activity, and so much difficulty that it'll disturb Einik Shabbos. And that's why, wait till after Shabbos. That's the pshat, the interpretation of the Rambam. The Balamor is a totally different approach. And the Balamor explains, when you lay a siege on a city, it's inevitable. It must involve Chilul Shabbos. And the same when you travel the high seas on a boat. There is always maintenance and work to be done, and it might involve Chilul Shabbos. But it's a necessity, and it's pikuach nefesh. However, if you could, Chachamim said, don't embark and don't put the siege, Gimel Yomim, because that is nera kemasna lechalel esel Shabbos. It seems as if you planned intentionally to be Mechal Shabbos. And that's an Issa de Rabbanon. Nere kemasna lachalal Issa Shabbos. So both the Rambam, Rif, and the Balamora have the same pshat, the same interpretation in these two halachas. However, the Meiri, in halacha number 1, he brings both pshatim. Halacha number 2, only the Balamora. So the Gemara says, but if they started and they already have a siege, they go on with war activities even in Shabbos. Adrideta, afilu b'Shabbos. This Fasemis wonders. If it's war, then it's pikuach nefesh. Do we need a pasuk that pikuach nefesh doich Shabbos? War always involves pikuach nefesh. The enemy endangers our troops. The enemy endangers our population. And we are there to fight, to salvage our people. So it's pikuach nefesh. Why do we need a pasuk adaridato? One might argue it's just an asmachta ba'alma. But the Gemara is mashma. Kain hoyu shamay oima adaridato afilu b'Shabbos. So the Svasemis is machalish a big chiddush. And he says, machalish Shabbos, when waging war, is not based on pikuach nefesh. It's based on a halacha. Melchama doiche Shabbos. Being successful and victorious in war overrides Shabbos. Just like karbonis override Shabbos. Mila bishmini override Shabbos. There's a halacha misuyemes. Malchama doiche Shabbos. And that is what Shammai learns from Adaridato afilu b'Shabbos. And that's the big chiddush. According to this Vasemis, when you're waging war, even if the army would ask me, which they don't, I would be controlled. According to Shammai Zokin, being victorious. And every campaign and every maneuver should be successful, override Shabbos, and you do not need to take into consideration, couldn't we wait till after Shabbos? Will we be putting lives in danger if we don't do this? That's the pshat of the Svasemis. And the Svasemis was Machabim to Chuvas Arivash Simen Tov Kuf Aleph. It's not a pillar, because I explained many times, the derech halimud of the Svasemis was, he learned Gemara Rashi Tosis, and he wrote. So interesting to realize that many times the Svasemis is Machabim to the Rashba, the Rabban, and the Ran on the spot, and he doesn't bring the Rishonim. On one hand, it's an interesting derech halimud. On the other hand, it's a testament to the greatness of the Svasemis that is Machabim Todio to our great Rishonim. Chuvas Arivash Tav Kuf Aleph says exactly the same. Waging war on Shabbos, you do not need to take into consideration pikuach nefesh. Hatzlacha b'malchama doiche Shabbos. Maybe this chiddush depends on two different interpretations that we find. Rambam, Perek Ches Halacha Aleph and Hilchos Malachim. So before we learn Perek Vav, and now we go over to Perek Ches. Perek Ches Hilchos Malachim v'Malchamas and Rambam deals with another halacha, the Shas Malchama, the Torah's Mati Machoris Asuris. The source of this halacha is Chunin Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Chalutz Eitzova Keshia Konsu Begvul Akum V'Kovshum V'Yishbu Mehem Muter Lehem Lechon Leveles Trefes Abos Echaze V'Kiyoytze Bo Im Yirav V'Lo Yimotzo Ma Yoichal Ela Machoris Elu HaAsuri V'Chein Shoysi Yayin Nesach Mepia Shmu Alamdu Botam Aleim Kol Tuv Arpe Chazirim V'Kiyoytze Bohein Botim Aleim Kol Tuv. And the Torah says, whatever you find is yours. Even Bosechazia. So the Rambam says that this halacha applies only if Yirav v'lo yimotza ma yoichal. The Radbaz on the spot wonders if they're starving from hunger. Once again, it's pikuach nefesh. What do we need to learn the Piyashmua from Botam Aleim Kol Tuv? If they're dying from hunger, it's pikuach nefesh. And if they're going to be so hungry they can't fight, it's once again pikuach nefesh. Interesting chiddush in Radbaz. Very nuanced. The Radbaz says, if they have enough food, there is no heter to eat chazir and avedas atletis. But it's not a real pikuach nefesh situation. They could send a convoy and bring food. the chiddush of the Torah is when you're waging war, the Torah says, take every possible precaution. And whenever a convoy leaves base, there's always the danger of an ambush or a missile attack. You could never know. When you're in the garrison, you're in the base, then you're safer when you need to leave the perimeters. And that is the chiddush, Votam Aleim Kol Toiv. They don't need to make any effort to bring kosher food because we don't want them to put anyone's life in jeopardy. So I explained. I explained in my sforum, primarily in Minchas Social and Corona, the concept of pikuach nefesh has limits. Not every extremely remote danger to life is defined pikuach nefesh to be Leicha Shabbos. And this is a lengthy discussion. Anybody could find it in Minchas Social and Corona. But in times of war, the Torah says, you put no one's life in risk. Every soldier is precious, and you take every precaution, and therefore, there is no need to bring kosher food. You eat whatever you find, even if it's not kosher. But it is clear from the Rambam, and that's the Radbaz's interpretation. The Ramban disagrees with the Rambam. And the Ramban is in Pashas Veschanen, Ramban al Torah, and the Ramban says, the heter of Arpe de Chazira has nothing to do with Pikuach Nefesh. In times of war, the Torah is Matir, Macholas Asuris, Nevelis, Treifes, and Bosi Chazir, even if there's no Sakona involved. So the Sfas Emes and the Rivash regarding Shabbos are the same as the Ramban regarding Macholas Asuris. In times of war, there's no Isser Macholas Asuris. Times of war, there is no Isser of Chilul Shabbos. But that's a Chiddush. The Rambam and the Radbaz clearly say there must be some danger involved. The Chiddush is you don't need to make any effort to bring kosher food. You eat whatever you find, because we don't want anyone to put his life in danger in times of war. So this Vasamis is a Chiddush, but he has a source in Chuvas Haribash. And a similar discussion we find in Perek Ches, Churan Yud Zayin, regarding Macholas Asuris. So with this info age, you need to be very careful. Since my Tzoi Shabbos, I don't have a spare moment. And I'm dealing with questions and shaylas, and also with chizuk to communities, chizuk to troops, chizuk to individuals. And it's heart-wrenching. I just sit and cry with people. Many soldiers are so worried if they might be taken into captivity, as 150 people were, and it's heartbreaking whether their wives will be agunas. So the place can say you cannot give a get al tonight. That's out. That's off the table. Even though in days of yore, you do find Mishnah Gemara get al tonight. But could one be memana a shliach? If they won't know my whereabouts, if I'm dead, then my wife could marry. If I'm alive, I want you to write a gift. Is that legitimate? If I would give a psak to one individual that it's okay, there will be 1,000 people doing it. And it is clear to me that that will be a terrible michshel halacha. It's complicated. Being mamana shliach is complicated. You need to be mamana the edom and the sofer, and it's complicated. So this is something we should not do. And the army is also very much against this because they think it'll have a terrible effect on the morale of the troops. So instead of giving halachic psak, how to be mamana shliach, I give brachas. And I tell everyone, don't be worried, you're going to come safely home and you're going to spend wonderful years at zikra v'seiva with your wife and your family. And then when the people leave my home, or I put down the telephone, I look up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, Rabbeinu Shalom, I gave brachas leman kvod shimcha. It's not for me, it's just for you. So please see to it that my brachas will be mekuyim, because if not, that's going to be very bad. I say leman kvod shimcha, brother, that's going to be a chilul Hashem. So I really hope that at least this time, my brachas will be mekuyim, and all those people will siyata d'shmaya come safely home. So on one hand, I'm coming back to Hilchos Shabbos. Anything that even remotely is associated with skonas nefashos, I have no problem being makel. But it is only natural that at a time like this, people take this too far. And everything is mutar. So there was some Rabbanim that said you could make calls on Shabbos, calling your non-Jewish friends to they note money and make an appeal, which I did not agree to. It's such a far stretch of pikuach nefesh. The money you're donating, not sure that it'll save lives. If it will, it's going to be, till your money is going to become a tank or a weapon or a bulletproof vest. That's going to take a month. We very much hope that in a month's time, but Tishkot Oretz, we don't know, but I did not agree to this. A radio station called me, a semi-from radio station, a conservative radio station, not really from. Could they broadcast on Shabbos to lift the morale of the people? Once again, it's important, but not everything that is important could be defined as pikuach nefesh. So on one hand, yes, people working in the Shabbat and intelligence from people, I said, you need to work on Shabbos. This is a time of war. This is a time of crisis. There are a few young women working in the police. And I said, if you get a call on Shabbos, you must do your job. Baruch Hashem, Mitzvah Shabbos, they called me that they were not called on Shabbos. Baruch Hashem, the authorities, the security establishment is careful not to ask from people to be machal Shabbos when there is no need. They are very forthcoming. They know how Shabbos is important to us. So any chashash of pikuach nefesh, when we're dealing with the well-being of a country, of an army, of so many people, we need to go to the extreme. That some activities in no way would I define as pikuach nefesh. And we need to be very careful in a time like this. It shouldn't be hutra aretzua and make Shabbos choil. Some things will be very difficult to turn back when this war is over. So we need to be, on one hand, forthcoming, and we need to know, to be strong enough and courageous enough to say, on the other hand, we need to make a stand and not abuse pikuach nefesh and Shabbos, and be careful. What is not associated with pikuach nefesh is us. So we spoke about achdus, but there are two more things I want to stress. The koyach of tefillah. The Baal Shem Tov says, the Gemara Brachas Dafov, Ma'idach siv karun zulus lebnei Adam aposek el te'elam. Varam oimdim berum sheloinam bebnei Adam azalzelen behem. Zet tefillah. So the Baal Shem Tov said, why are people sometimes mezalzel in tefillah? Because we daven and daven. And sometimes you daven from the depth of your heart, with tears streaming down your face, and your prayers go unanswered. Anybody that lost a family member, especially a young family member, had this terrible feeling. or my wife passed away, and she was relatively young, she was 60. We came together, the family, so many times at the Kaisel. And we davened that Leila Shemayim, and everyone was crying. She passed away. It happens to everyone. So sometimes you develop a chulsha. So the Baal Shem Tov says, every tefillah goes up to the Kisei HaKavod. And no tefillah coming out of a sincere Yiddish hearts sinks into oblivion. No tefillah goes nowhere. Every tefillah goes up to Kisei HaKavod. But sometimes we may never know how HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered our tefillahs. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what we need, and He knows what needs to be. If we believe in Koyach HaTfilah, we need to daven. Because if you believe in Koyach HaTfilah and you don't daven, that means you don't care. If you care, why aren't you doing your utmost? So if you believe in one hand and you care on the other hand, you must be doing more. And we need to believe every capital Tehillim could be a lifesaver. So in my shul since Yom Kippur, after every Tefillah Shachas Mincha Mara, we say 3 prokim in Tehillim. Every Perek is effective. Chof and Kuf Lamed are general prokim that we say b'Shas Tzorah. Yanchu Hashem b'Shas Tzorah memamakim k'Yosichu Hashem. Perek Pei Gimel deals specifically with warfare, when our enemies fight us and want to destroy us. So these 3 prokim in my shul, we say after every tefillah, and I recommend every shul in the world should do so. The other thing is Torah. The schus of Torah. You can't even ever imagine and appreciate. In Megillah Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, and once again Sanhedrin Mem Daled Amud Aleph, Chazal tell a story. Yeshua ben Nun, B'shas Hagzeira, B'shas Melchemes Mitzvah Kibush Eretz Yisrael, went out by night, and he sees a commander, a general, and he's baffled. He was the commander of the Jewish army, and he doesn't know this officer. Obviously, he doesn't recognize his uniform. He sees a Sar Tzava, and he asks, Halonu atim letzorenu? And the Sar Tzava answers, Yeshua, I'm not a mortal. I'm not a person. I'm an angel. And I was sent from the heavens by HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a message to you. Sar Tzava Hashem Anochi. And Yeshua asks the Malach, what is it? And the Malach says, Emish vitaltum tumit shalbeinu wabayim v'hayim vitaltum en ha-Torah. Yesterday you were mevatel kamonos, and today you were mevatel Torah. And Yeshua asks, Aleize membos? So which of the 2 is my problem? And he says, Al atu basi, bitul Torah. That's your problem. And the Gemara says, both in Sanhedrin and Megillah, how does Yeshua respond? V'yonam b'toch ha'emek, malamed shalan ba'um kol shal halacha. And my question is, why kol shal halacha? So I have a comment. Probably I wasn't there. If I was, I wouldn't remember. If I would be there, if I would be Yeshua ben Nun, I would say to the Malach, Reb Malach, maybe you're a great Malach. I'm not a maven, I'm a Malach. But you forgot a Gemara and Soita Daf Mem Dalet. So what are you talking to me about Talmud Torah? We're waging a bitter war. People are dying. We're fighting. The troops are exhausted. Maybe Yeshua made that argument. What did the Malach say? The Malach says, Yeshua, you don't get it. You don't understand what you see. Open your eyes and look at me. If I would be sent by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to talk about Torah, to demand El Boino Shel Torah, I would be dressed up in a hamburger and a frock, like a Rosh Hashiva, or maybe in a shtreimel and a kaftan, like a Rebbe. I was sent by HaKadosh Baruch Hu in full military gear. You thought I'm an officer. Why is that? Because what I am talking to you is not about Talmud Torah, it's about war. Jews don't win war just by the force of power. We are the people of eternity. Nothing about us is b'derech hateva. We win wars b'schus HaTorah. Chazal teach us, oim des hoyer agleinu b'schus b'malchoma b'schus sha'ar shalom shoysim b'Torah. Now let me make this clear. It's not that we don't need an army. Israel needs to have the best army in the world. The best trained soldiers, the most modern equipment, and the motivation like no other. And I believe we have all this, but all this is not enough. We have experienced miraculous victories in this country. We also have experienced devastation. Hashem ish malcham. To be victorious on the battlefield, we need heroic troops, but we also need koyach HaTorah. So the Malach tells Yeshua, you cannot win this war with bittul Torah. You cannot win this war without koyach HaTorah. What does Yeshua do? V'yolam b'toicha eimek. Shel Halacha. We would expect him to set up a chevras tehillim. No, it's a koilel erev. I guess they learn choshen mishpach. Shel Halacha. And why is that? There's an amazing Torah to be Eliyahu. So before I share with you the content, what is Torah to be Eliyahu? Ksubas Kuva of Chazal teach us, Eliyahu Novi learned with one of the Ameroim Rav Onan, and that's Torah de Eliyahu, Perek Yud. Pshat in a posuk in Sefer Shoftim, Magen im Yira'eh, v'romach barbo melech Yisrael, yifchar Hashem b'chadoshim. Arbo melech Yisrael שיוצא למלחמה, אם יש ביניהם זוג אחד של תלמיד החכם, אני מציל את כולם. אשרי מי שדברי תורה מתחדשים על ידו. והקדוש ברוך הוא אומר, בשבילך אני מציל את ישראל. Once again, what is the emphasis? יבחר השם בחדושים, מי שדברי תורה מתחדשים על ידו. I'm speaking to Americans, so you're not so versed in Lashon Kodesh. Magen im Yira'eh v'romach barabo melech Yisrael. The Romach is the sword or the spear. The Rom and the Magen is the shield. The Romach is an offensive weapon. And the warrior, the ancient warrior, had the Magen in his right, the Romach in his right hand. The Magen is the shield, the defensive weapon, which he holds in his left. The Magen and the Romach, the sword and the shield, were transformed 10,000 times till the modern battlefield. Soldiers no longer have swords and shields. Today it's infantry, special forces, artillery, armor, planes, missiles, anti-missile missiles, anti-missile missiles, and rockets, and cyber warfare. But forever, an army will never be victorious unless he invests in offense and defense. That is the Magen and the Romach. B'malchamto shel Torah, we have the Magen and the Romach, the Maksha and the Tarz. The Maksha attacks. He has kashas, wants to tear apart, and the Tarzan defends, and he is miyashev. To be successful on the battlefield, we need Malchamta Shel Torah. And that is what Chidush Torah are all about. Anybody that learned in Yeshiva or in Koil, anybody that ever heard a good Shiur, I hope my Shiurim are good. How are we Machadish Halacha when you have a kasha? The demands are teretz. So the Gemara Bani Toys is at 10,000 kashas, at 20,000 tilusim, and each teretz is halacha. That is the mogen and the roimach of the base Medrash. Asher Misha Divrei Torah Meschachman Yodai. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Bishvilcho Arimatze L'Yisrael. Arbo Melech Mi Yisrael Shiyotze L'Malchama. Im Yesh B'neihem Zug Echad Shel Talmid Chacham. So what does Yehoshua do when he realizes that he needs Torah to win this battle? There are so many Talmidei Chachamim in the army, in the front lines. So many Talmidei Chachamim and Tzaddikim that I personally know, and thousands more that I don't know. And tens of thousands of Revavai Samchis who are in the yeshivas, in the koilalim. So let us open down that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yiten Oivenu Nigashim B'Funeinu. But this is a call to all the Bnei Torah in the world, in America and the world over. Young boys your age are dying in the battlefield. You bear responsibility. Everyone bears responsibility, and everyone needs to engage when Israel is at war and the Yeshuv is in danger. And you need to feel your Torah that you're learning in this Medrash saves lives. So the young soldiers out there in the trenches, sitting on the tanks, don't have a 2-hour break to sleep every day in the afternoon. They don't have, neither should you. Neither should you. They don't have a nap every day, neither should you. So you should also be making that extra effort. Daven more, daven better. Learn more, learn better. And you need to firmly believe your Torah and your Tefillah is making a difference. It's making a difference because that is what Chazal teach us. So I once again say, if you believe and if you care, you must be doing better. More davening, better davening. More learning, better learning. Tzedakah tatzon mamamis. It's unbelievable how much money is pouring out of America. A few months ago, I was in America raising funds for my koil. And I saw that these are difficult times. Real estate is in crisis, interest rates are up. Some people cut back. And now it's unbelievable. People are giving so much money. I just hope that all this money goes to good places because there are always those that take advantage. And I advise my friends, be careful and check out where you're giving. So many people told me, Rabbi Weiss, you could make a lot of money, get onto this bandwagon and help some families in the South. No, chas v'sholom. I'm not going to take advantage of anything. Alles is b'shat. Kodesh Baruch Hu gives everyone what he needs. He just advised caution because we already know that some of these, campaigns were totally false, and some might even be connected with terror. Tzedakah tatzon mamavis. Give tzedakah. Give tons. Give as much as you could. Just be careful that where you're giving is really needed. That's really saving lives and helping people. Sha'Kodesh Baruch Hu yarachem olayim. With all this amazing achdus, and all this Ahavas Yisrael, the Chesed, and the Tfilis. In our Shechina, we got together Thursday night. Thousands of people. And the Tfilis were Adlei V'Shemayim. Klal Yisrael comes together. The Frum and the non-Frum. And we, each of us has his tafkid. So be proud that you're sitting in yeshiva. But sitting in yeshiva doesn't mean you're exempt from service. This is your service. Davening and learning. And your Torah and your Tefillah is making a difference. So Mokim Yeracham Aleinu. Achenu kol beisesor alasun betzuro ubeshivyo. Bo'imden ben biyam ben biyavosha Mokim Yeracham Aleinu. V'yetziyah mitzora v'ravoho. Ma'afel la'ero yeshibed li'geulo. שהקדוש ברוך הוא ייתן אויבינו מגופם לפנינו. And we should be zorcha v'notati shalom ba'oretz v'simchas olam liyosheveim. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישלח לנו משיח צדקנו במהרה בימינו. אמן.